The CIA warned Ukraine against attacking the Nord Stream pipelines last summer after it learned about a Ukrainian ploy to sabotage it. Well, that's according to a new report in the Wall Street Journal. The journal's article maintains that 3 months before the explosions, the U.S. agency sent a message to Ukraine after it had been tipped off by the Netherlands' military intelligence service.
The CIA seems to have taken the tip seriously, but per the Wall Street Journal's reporting, they were not convinced that Ukraine could follow through with such a plot. MSNBC's Chris Hayes tweeted, "So, looks more and more like Sy Hersh got this completely wrong, or alternately a bunch of different outlets on 2 different continents have all gotten it totally wrong, and Hersh's single source was correct." I don't really understand the gloating here, because even if Sy Hersh did get it wrong, so did all of the mainstream mouthpieces for months and months and months who first insisted Russia did it and then insisted, well, maybe it was some random, non-state affiliated entity. Yeah. It would never be the U.S. or the Ukrainian government. And now we've pretty much narrowed it down to Sy Hersh's theory, which is that he said it was U.S. backed and led the training occurred in a U.S. facility to train the divers. Now the reporting from the Wall Street Journal and other places is that this was greenlit by the Ukrainian government, second highest level from Zelensky, Ukrainian government, and the U.S. was aware of it, and according to these statements from the CIA, actually tried to deter the Ukrainians from going through with it. Now, I think you should I urged we interviewed Sy Hersh here, and I said, take what he says with a grain of salt, because he is not, I can't review the documents he says he's reviewed, so I don't know. I think you should also take what the CIA says with a grain of salt. Would the CIA ever lie to us, Briahna?
I mean, that's the thing. What's so funny about this is that back in, I believe, March, after Sy Hersh's reporting came out, he followed up writing that he had intelligence that even though there was basically a media blackout on his story, remember, they didn't even cover it for weeks, maybe even up to a month, but that he had heard from his intelligence channels that certain elements in the CIA were asked to prepare a cover story in collaboration with German intelligence that would provide the American and German press with an alternative version for the destruction of the Nord Stream 2. In the words of the intelligence community, the agency was, quote, to pulse the system in an effort to discount the claim that Biden had ordered the pipeline's destruction. Okay, so we had Sy Hersh's reporting, there was a delay in mainstream media coverage, and then we got a volley of alternative events that seemed to align with what Sy Hersh predicted would happen, that there was an effort to provide some alternative narrative that would detract from what Sy Hersh was saying. Now what we also know is that there is a history of these mainstream papers basically printing CIA accounts. They'll print what the CIA tells them. They'll print a police report without doing any investigative searches on their own. Now, when you look at the quality of this particular story, the posture of it is, okay, America heard that it was coming, and it's not just that America was an innocent third-party bystander. The story that is being put out there is that America really tried to stop it. We're not just innocent, we're kind of the good guys in this story, and we just didn't manage to be able to do so. So think about it this way. We're being told that a country, Ukraine, that is waging a war with Russia, largely being financially backed by the United States of America, was told by its financial backer not to commit the biggest act of industrial sabotage in the history of mankind, but chose to do it anyway, and that the United States, which is basically funding this war substantially, didn't have any ability to provide incentives to Ukraine for them not to do it, and chose not to make any consequences for Ukraine for having undermined the U.S.'s instructions.
Absolutely, and this is supposed to be the theory of us giving foreign aid, giving money, is that then we can affect the policies. Never works. They always do what they want. We have to follow through and shut off the spigot of money when countries do things we don't want them to do.
So is anyone asking the question?
Point. So
okay,
yeah,
America,
I agree with you.
CIA, you're by your own version of events, you told Ukraine not to blow up your ally. Ukraine is not in NATO. Germany is in NATO.
Right.
You told Ukraine not to blow up your allies' $11 billion oil pipeline. You did it anyway, and we just said, oh shucks, and continued to fund the war effort for the next almost a year
that
now.
itself is pretty incendiary. And there should be questions about, as we've continued to ask, why is the U.S. government not more interested in getting to the bottom of Nord Stream? Maybe there should be some self-reflection. Maybe there should be hearings and questions about why their funding is continuing despite the country doing explicitly, according to our government, this is what they claim, explicitly violating orders our CIA gave them.
And let's not forget the posture of this. Part of why many people found Sy Hersh's reporting to be so compelling is that there was a great deal of corroborating evidence. There was the positioning of the event, the explosives being placed during this Baltic naval training demonstration, that happened in June. The new version of events also has America becoming aware of the attempt to place a bomb in June. The new series of events doesn't really explain the gap between June and September the way that Sy Hersh's does. Sy Hersh says it was planted under the cover of these naval exercises, and it was a remote detonation event that happened later in the year. The question of who trained these people to do what is a very technical dive is still up in the air. Sy Hersh said part of why he would point to the United States is because there are very few countries and agencies that have the ability to train people who could effectuate this. The new version of events from the CIA doesn't seem to be reckoning with this. It says, well, America didn't think that Ukraine could pull it off, which is a tacit suggestion that there is a real technical difficulty in doing this, but no explanation of how they did manage to pull it off, absent the training facilities and expertise that Sy Hersh says largely is held by the United States and maybe a couple of other governments that are not Ukraine. And there is very little, despite people framing this the way that Chris Hayes did, as contradicting Sy Hersh's event. None of the external corroborating evidence that's being leveraged here actually goes against what Sy Hersh is saying.
The accounts are in contradiction. We don't know who is right. I mean, Sy Hersh said they were trained to do this on
No,
US soil.
I'm talking about the external, what we do know in terms of the external corroborating
What we
events.
do know is not in conflict, yeah.
Right, so it's not as though...
Ultimately, whether the U.S. trained them to do it or whether we said no and didn't is a massive difference.
So if I tell you a story that I was on a scooter and I fell off at 12 noon yesterday, and there's some discussion about who's at fault. And I have one version of events, and you have another version of events. And my version of events is that I hit a pothole and fell off. And your version of events is that a car hit me and I fell off. Well, if we go to the site and there's no pothole, that undermines my version of events, right? Mm-hmm. Or if we have street cam footage and there's no car, that undermines your versions of events. What I'm saying is that there's nothing. People are telling a different narrative about the lead up and what happened, but there's nothing that's actually disproven, as far as I can tell, in Sy Hersh's count. It's just a different gloss that's being put on what led to the corroborating events that we can externally look at.
Sure.
And so I just don't understand.
It's not verified either way.
No, exactly. But that's not how it's being framed. People like Chris Hayes are saying, this blows Sy Hersh's reporting out of the water. Right. When I still think, and I think you're right to take both accounts with a grain of salt.
It blows all the reporting. It blows tons of mainstream framing of what happened out of the water.
It's just offering another alternative account.
Right.
I think that's what it does.
Yeah,
and while I agree with you, wait a minute. While I agree with you that Sy Hersh's account we should take with a grain of salt, there's nothing dispositive that would cause you to have to reject his account based on what else has been said, unless you just take the CIA's version of events as truth on its face.
Sure.
That's it.
It's just a different thing that's annoying us. I'm most annoyed by Chris Hayes and people like him pretending that this is what they said all along.
Sure.
And this was absolutely not what they were saying.
Yeah, that's important too.
Yeah. More Rising right after this.